Christmas is a time of traditions. I think everybody has their Christmas traditions in your family, right? Like when my dad was a kid, they would put the tree up, but Santa would decorate the tree when Santa visited. I don't know how Santa decorated all those trees and put all those presents out in one night, but that was the way it happened. And then when I was a kid, I grew up on a Christmas tree farm. And we had this great room, so like a 2-story living room. And so we would always get this big tree. And invariably, my dad would put it up, and real trees have gaps in them. So he would cut off the lower branches to put in the stand, and then he'd drill a hole in the trunk and stick the extra branches in, so we'd have this perfect tree every year at Christmas. And I will always remember how my dad was like putting the tree together like a jigsaw puzzle. And we had a rotation. We would go to one family for Thanksgiving and then the other family for Christmas. And my favorite rotation was the year we did Thanksgiving at my Grandma Wolf's, because she was both my grandparents were good cooks, but Grandma Wolf put out a pretty good Thanksgiving spread. And then my Grandma Christman on my mom's side, I had cousins who were my age. So I loved doing Christmas Day with them, because then I had someone to play with all my toys with, And so we remember these traditions. And we get happy when we think about all that stuff, but sometimes, as life invariably happens, and especially all of us in this room have been around the sun a few times, I'm sure all of us have at some point in time lost some of the people that did those traditions with us. My friend Jody, they called her dad the Santa Man. I'll show you. I brought a sample of why. He used to make these. He would make hundreds. Every year he'd make probably 5 or 6 different handmade Santas. He hand-carved hundreds of these Santas. And his house was just like a museum. I mean, every inch of their house was Santas and Santa decorations, trees packed full, and curio cabinets full of Santas, and all the ones he made and all the ones he collected. And the yard was Clark Griswold style, like decorated. So all this stuff, right? Well, her dad passed away a few years ago. And so now, Christmas decorating just is painful for her. She doesn't want to put up that tree because it reminds her of her dad. And they don't want to do, on Christmas Day, I'm like, how was your Christmas? She's like, I got to be honest, it sucked. It was really hard. Because without her Santa man, dad, to share it with, it's really hard. And so I think all of us can relate to that on some level. All of us in here have lost someone who we had a Christmas tradition with. And then it's hard to go on without that Christmas tradition. And that those traditions can bring a lot of pain. And we get this idea that Christmas is all about these things, and we get all excited about these things, but also we have to understand that for some, Christmas is just hard. It's just painful. And some of the things that everybody else is doing, for some of us, is just hurts. And it just reminds us of what we don't have. That person we used to make the cookies with. Like my mom makes all the cookies. She used to hide them because my dad would eat them all before Christmas. But so in our family, the cookie making was a thing. And so it's hard when you don't have that person to do those things with. And what do we do with that? What do we do with those feelings? How do we address that? And I like to relate things to movies, and I was thinking about what Christmas movie helps us understand these feelings. And I thought of the Grinch. There's a reason that the Grinch was a Grinch. There's a reason that he didn't love Christmas. And I found this little clip. I've not actually seen this version of the movie, but now I want to. There's a little clip that helps us understand why the Grinch was so Grinchy, because some people at Christmas are kind of Grinchy because Christmas hurts. And so let's watch this little clip of what made the Grinch so Grinchy. I think some of us can relate to the Grinch. You've felt alone, or you have felt like all those traditions that the Who's loved, all those traditions that they were like, Christmas is all about the lights and the presents and the feast and all these things that we say that our American culture says that Christmas is about, can be really hard for some of us who don't have that at that time, or who have been, he was an orphan. In the Bible they talk about orphans and widows, and they kind of put those together. These people who don't have that family and all the things. We get it all messed up what Christmas is supposed to be. Our culture gets Christmas wrong. Now, if you know the Grinch story, you know, fortunately, there's a little heroine in the story. Her name is Cindy Lou Who, and she's a little girl who looks at all of the trappings of what everyone thinks that Christmas is, all the decorations and the feasts and the presents and all the hype and all the songs and all the things, and she's like, is this really what Christmas is about? Is this really what we're celebrating? All the presents and all the stuff. And as I look at the Grinch story, I think, man, Dr. Seuss had to have been a Christian to question, is this what Christmas is about? And fortunately for the Grinch, Cindy Lou Who sees him and sees that he's just a being who needs love. And so she gives him love. And that love turns his life around. He has a turnaround story, and he becomes this generous giver who feels joy. And Cindy Lou has it right. Christmas is not supposed to be about the presents and the tree and the lights and the cookies and the feast. Those things are great, don't get me wrong. I'm going to eat my share of cookies on Christmas. I'm going to be with my family, and that's going to be nice. But that's not what Christmas is about. Christmas, for those of us who believe in Jesus, is supposed to be about celebrating that Jesus came. And so as I was thinking about what is it like for the orphans and the widows, and I think about the Bible, because I always think, like, what's the answer? And what does the Bible have to say about that? Well, there's a story of a widow that's part of the Christmas story, and many of you have probably never heard of Anna. Unless you really read your Bible a lot, you probably have no idea who Anna is. So this part of the story takes place, Jesus has been born, and 8 days after a Jewish boy is born, the family is supposed to bring him to the temple to be consecrated. Consecrated means you say that I'm going to raise him in the Jewish way, and I'm going to raise him to believe in God, and I'm going to kind of give him to God, if you will. So Mary and Joseph are bringing Jesus to the temple to consecrate him. And when they come to the temple, they run into two people, Anna and, what's the guy's name? There's a man too. But I'm going to tell you Anna's part of the story. So it says here that Anna was a prophetess. A prophetess is someone who hears from God. Someone who has the ability to hear from God. So Anna was there at the temple. She was from the family of Phanuel in the tribe of Asher. She was now very old. She had lived with her husband for 7 years before he died and left her alone. And now she was 84 years old. Anna was always in the temple. She never left. She worshiped God by fasting and praying day and night. Anna was there when Joseph and Mary came to the temple, and she praised God and talked about Jesus to all those who are waiting for God to free Jerusalem. Anna was 84 years old. She was married for 7 years. Now, back then, girls typically were between 12 and 16 when they got married. So let's say for easy math, she was 15. Nice round 5, multiple 5. She was married for 7 years. So that means around the age of 22 probably, she was widowed with no kids. So for 60 years, Anna was alone. For 60 years, she went through her life with no one to talk about life with, no kids to help her out, no kids to give presents to, no one to make cookies for, and do all the things. 60 years is a long time to be alone, especially in that culture for a woman. It was really shameful to not have kids back then. Like, it's hard enough for us, like, I'm 50 and I don't have kids, and my students often ask me, like, Miss Wolf, do you have any kids? I'm like, no, and they look at me like I have 2 heads. What do you mean you don't have kids? They just can't fathom that a woman my age could not have kids. Anna was 84 with no kids, and she had been married. At least my excuse is I haven't been married. So that was really hard for her to be that alone for that long. But Anna gives us a hint at what the answer is. How did Anna deal with her aloneness? She did it by making God her husband. She did it by coming to the temple all the time, constantly. She lived her life for God, worshiping him, spending time with him, praying and talking to God. God became her husband. And she was a prophetess. She says she went around telling everybody about Jesus. Now, when she met Jesus, he was 8 days old. He hadn't done any miracles yet. He was just a little baby. And it's amazing to me that she saw this baby. I mean, hundreds of babies had to come through the temple on a regular basis, but for whatever reason, God let her know that's the one. That's my child right there. And so then she'd been telling him, the king is coming, the king is coming, the king is coming. And they're probably like, oh my gosh, Anna, we haven't heard from God for 400 years. And you think the king is coming. They probably thought she was crazy. As she's telling people, the king is coming. God told me the king's coming in my lifetime. They're probably like, yeah, sure, Anna, whatever. Patting her on the head, scooching her along. And then God came through. And she got to see the king with her own eyes at 84 years old. And then she probably went around saying, the king is here, the king is here. And they're probably like, still like, oh gosh, she's entered another level of dementia there. I don't see any king, Anna. Haven't seen a parade with someone riding in on a horse. She's like, I'm telling you, I saw him. He was a baby. And they're like, uh-huh. Sure, Anna. But she just knew. She trusted God enough because she had spent so much time fasting and praying and spending time with God. She just knew. God let her in on his little secret. And that is the answer for us. I have a friend, Bridget. She's a lot like Anna. She's my age, and her parents are gone. I think she might have one brother, but he lives like down in Lexington, so she lives up here. So she doesn't have any close family up here. And so what she does on Christmas, because Christmas is hard when you're single and you're alone. And what she does is she goes to every church service she can find. She'll go to 3 church services on Christmas Eve and 3 church services on Christmas Day. She'll go find them that she can hit multiples. Because she knows that when she's in church, she's with a family of people, a family of believers. Bridget understands, because she's been made, kind of a necessity, that Christmas isn't all about buying the presents and the tree and the lights and the feast and all that stuff. Bridget, because of her forced loneliness, has had the realization that Cindy Lou Who had. Christmas isn't about the lights and the presents and all the traditions. And I'm not saying those are bad. Christmas is supposed to be, for those of us who believe in God, Christmas is supposed to be about Jesus. But I think a lot of us in American culture get so wrapped up in the presents and the buying and the lights and the feasts and all the things that we forget to spend any time with the person we say that we're celebrating. I think about Anna, and she said she knew what Jesus would be, and she wanted everybody to know that. She said, this is what we're here for. Because that she was told by Isaiah, this prophet in the Old Testament, he says, there's going to be a special child born. God's going to give us his son, and he's going to lead you people. His name will be Wonderful Counselor, Powerful God, Father who lives forever, and Prince of Peace. He's going to be someone who wants to be with us. A counselor is someone who is with you. A powerful God, a father, is someone who wants to be with you. A Prince of Peace means he wants to bring peace into your troubled heart. That's what God promised. And that's what Anna held on to, the belief that there was something good coming even when she couldn't see it for 60 years. She didn't see what she knew was coming. And still she came to the temple. And still she came to God. And still she believed. She never gave up on believing in him. The Bible says in Matthew 6, where your heart is where your treasure is. Something along those lines. Where your treasure is, there your heart lies. At Christmas, we show God where our treasure lies. Does our treasure lie in the tree and the lights and the feasts and the cookies and the presents? Or does our treasure lie with Jesus? Are you spending time, as you say you're celebrating the reason for the season, are you? Are you spending time with Jesus? And when you're sad, if you are an orphan and a widow, like Anna and the Grinch, and you're feeling very Grinchy, The antidote for that is time with Jesus. Jesus can bring you the encouragement and the healing. He can speak to you. He can surround you with what you need. Sometimes it's your daily bread. Sometimes it's just that little bit that you need, that little bit of strength to put one foot in front of the other today and get through today. So this Christmas, I want you guys to, one, get closer to God. Remember that He is the reason for the season. And two, keep your eyes out. Keep your eyes open for Grinches and Annas in your surroundings, in your life. How can you help be the love of Jesus, the light of Jesus, the wonderful counselor, the Prince of Peace to those who think that Christmas sucks, quite honestly? How can we bring love into the life of the Annas and the Grinches in this world? And so I dare you this week to dedicate time this week to God, to set aside, put it in your calendar, whatever you got to do. Pull an Anna and set aside some time every day to be with Jesus, to journal with Him, to talk about Christmas to Him and what you're feeling and this, whatever feelings, good and bad, are going through your heart in this season and what He wants for you out of this. Ask Him. Ask God to help you to focus on His presence instead of the external pressures and the presence, Presents, of this season. Maybe read Luke 2, Anna's story, and reflect on how her faith got her through that. Her faith was the strength she needed to get through 60 years of being by herself. Or engage, reach out to someone who might feel left out this season. Look around your sphere for Grinches and Annas, for orphans and widows, for those who need to be included, those who need to feel seen, those who need to feel loved in this season. Offer a kind word, give them a card, invite them to dinner or coffee or something. Let us be the Cindy Lou Who's to those in our community who need that kind of encouragement. And all of God's children said,